Welcome, everyone. We're going to hold on for just 1 minute while we wait for folks to filter in. We have quite a few folks joining us tonight, and we're so pleased that you could participate in this webinar. We'll just give everybody about 15, 20 seconds to filter in. Great. Well, good evening and welcome to our webinar on inclusion in practice, how AUW's policies and practices promote inclusion. My name is Shannon Wolf, and I'm the Managing Director and Chief of Staff at AAUW National. I'm also grateful to be the staff liaison to our National Inclusion and Equity Committee that is the host of today's webinar. We have terrific panelists for today's session. First up, we have Dr. Melissa LeDuc. Melissa chairs the National Inclusion and Equity Committee. She earned her PhD in Curriculum and Instruction from Texas Tech University and has a BA in Chemistry from Hawaii Pacific University and a Master's in Chemistry from the University of Dayton. Melissa is currently a faculty member at National Intelligence University. She has been in the U.S. Air Force since 2005 and held instructor and faculty positions within the U.S. Air Force Academy, U.S. Air Force Reserve Officer Training Corps, Global School for Professional Military Education, and Squadron Officer School. Melissa is a member of the Literary Research Association and International Society for the Scholarship of Teaching and Learning. We also have with us today Dr. Luna Mukherjee. Luna is the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Chair of AAUW Missouri and past president of the AAUW Kansas City branch. She earned her doctorate in biomedical sciences from Mayo Clinic College of Medicine and MBA from Xavier University. She has 20 plus years of experience as a scientist, an innovator, an intellectual property professional, and an entrepreneur. She has worked on the application of a wide range of medical and scientific inventions and innovations for improving health and wellness and different entrepreneurial activities at medical centers, universities, and hospitals. Luna mentors women entrepreneurs and young professionals and is a member of the National Inclusion and Equity Committee. We also have joining us tonight Melinda Gall. After earning BA and JD degrees from Baylor University, Melinda has practiced employment law in San Antonio, Texas, representing employees for more than 40 years, in addition to working with several nonprofit organizations to advance the rights of women. Melinda served on the National AAUW Board of Directors after holding offices at the branch and state level and is currently Vice Chair of the National Board and Chair of the Governance Committee. Edwina Francis Martin is a public interest lawyer with deep experience in public policy, government relations, nonprofit management, and strategic communications. She is currently Commissioner and Public Administrator of Richmond County in New York City. Previously, she was Chief of Staff for a New York City Council member and a litigation associate at several private sector law firms. She does volunteer work in her community and in the New York City legal field. Edwina has served in many branch, state, and national roles and is a member of the National Board of Directors and the National Inclusion and Equity Committee. And last but not least, we have Megan Cassell with us tonight. Megan is AAUW's Senior Director of Policy and Member Advocacy. Megan has more than 20 years experience in nonprofits in policy and issue development and implementing targeted social impact strategies designed to engage key stakeholders and policymakers to advocate for positive policy outcomes. Prior to joining AAUW, Megan worked on state and local health policy with the Campaign for Tobacco-Free Kids and led efforts to expand LGBTQ equality in the Deep South with the Human Rights Campaign. She also worked for the Conservation Lands Foundation and was previously AAUW's field director, supporting local advocacy engagement and volunteer get out the vote efforts. Megan has an MA in social work with a focus on community organizing from Howard University and a BA from Allegheny College. Welcome to you all, and thank you so much for being here for what I'm sure will be a wonderful program. For all of the members joining us today, I hope you've had a chance to look at the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Toolkit on our website. The toolkit has many great resources for branches, including the Inclusion and Equity Committee's public plug and play programs. These programs assist branches in their diversity, equity, and inclusion programming. Plug and plays for previous webinar topics, as well as today's webinar topic, are available on the website. And we will preserve time at the end for questions. Please use that Q&A feature in the webinar to ask questions that we will circle back to at the end of the webinar. And with that, I will turn it over to Luna to get us started. Luna?
Thank you, Shannon. Hi, everyone. So inclusion and equity is very important for AAUW's mission, vision, and values. What is AAUW's mission? It is to advance gender equity for women and girls through research, education, and advocacy. AUW's vision is equity for all. AUW's values, non-partisan, fact-based, principled, inclusive, and intersectional. Inclusion of AUW members, staff, partners, and all those who support the mission, vision, and values of AUW helps us to move forward. Inclusion is infused in AUW's policies and practices. For example, AUW's policies on values and code of ethics, diversity, and disability access promote inclusion. Why is inclusion, diversity, and equity important? There are many reasons. For example, effectiveness, fairness, better outcomes, and so forth. In principle and in practice, AUW values and seeks an inclusive membership, workforce, leadership team, and board of directors. There shall be no barriers to full participation in this organization on the basis of age, disability, ethnicity, gender, gender identity, geographical location, national origin, race, religious beliefs, sexual orientation, or socioeconomic status. AAUW is firmly committed to providing equal access for its membership, workforce, or applicants with disabilities. Now I will turn it to Melinda, who will present on other policies and bylaws. Melinda?
Thank you, Luna. AAUW is unique in that it is a member organization. And as a member of this organization, we have certain rights, responsibilities as in being part of AAUW. As Luna has explained, our mission, our vision, we are an inclusive organization other than the requirement that you have a 2-year degree or the equivalent being some type of educational program that had a beginning and end that was completed that would be equivalent to getting a 2-year degree. So other than that, we try to be open to everyone. In the 80s, we opened up to men, even though we're the American Association of University Women. And now we are striving to be that membership organization that sets a standard for others, since equity is our goal. We have both bylaws and policies that we strive to make inclusive and bring the mission of AAUW to the forefront. So what's the difference between bylaws and policies? Well, bylaws are the governing documents of an organization. And as a membership organization, our bylaws are decided by you, the members of this organization. In the past, we used to set the bylaws at national conventions by delegates. But now, with one member, one vote, each and every one of you gets to vote on the bylaws of this organization. It is your organization, and you decide how it is moving forward. That's why this spring, you will have a vote on the open membership issue with the bylaws. We also have policies, and those policies are directed by the board of directors that you elect as members of this organization. Those policies are more specific and get into the details of how we run this organization. Part of those policies are the affiliate requirements, because as members of this organization, we are part of one group, AAUW, starting at the national level, going to the state level, and going to the branch level. And we, as part of branches and states, sign affiliate agreements to be part of the national organization. So we do have policies that talk about affiliate compliance. There are rules, and we have to follow those rules as members of this organization. We also have part of our policies, review policies that allow us to look at branches, states, and individual members who do not follow the rules of AAUW, who are not being the types of leaders that are advancing our mission. We can look at member activity, branch activity, and state activity, because we want to make sure that each and every one of us follows the mission and the vision of AAUW. And we strive to be inclusive and to reach for that goal of equity. Recently, probably today, most of you received an email from our AAUW board chair talking about a new civility policy that is on our website. Our governance committee, in anticipation of the vote on the open membership, and because this is what we strive for in AAUW, has created a civility policy. It is available on our website, and it is something that should be used at every branch in every state, and meetings should be conducted with the type of civility that is put forth in that policy. Because as members of this organization, we are one, working together, but we are not all alike. We have different views and we have different opinions. But when we are discussing those views and opinions, we should do so with civility. You will also see on the website, the governance committee has created a member rights and responsibilities. You as members have rights. National organization, your state organization, they provide to you, and you have rights as part of your membership. But you're also members of this organization, and as members of this organization, you have responsibilities. And so we encourage you, when you're looking to AAUW, remember you are one of many, and together we make up AAUW. AAUW is not national, state, and branches separate. We are one. And part of the members' rights and responsibilities is for you to participate in this organization. Although I'm speaking to people who are participating, but we want you to take back to your branches and to your states this new civility policy and this new member rights and responsibilities. And we encourage you to follow. As you see in this, we want you to be respectful. You have a responsibility to pay your dues. And we encourage you to support the organization as a member with donations. You need to vote in this upcoming election because, again, this is your organization and you make the rules. We want you to promote inclusivity and equity, and we want you to commit to engage. And finally, you get lots of information from AAUW. Please read it and please stay informed. Thank you, and I'll turn it over to Edwina and Megan.
Hopefully everyone can hear me. Hello? I'm on my work computer and sometimes it doesn't do what I want it to do. But if everyone's shaking your head, then you can hear me and I am actually unmuted. So good evening or afternoon to everyone, depending on where you're joining us from. Thank you so much, Luna and Melinda, for going over those important points just now. Particularly the civility policy. And I'm going to talk about sort of what that means in practice a little bit. Why is it so important this year? It's always important, number one, and it should be a part of how we conduct all of our work as members of AAUW. But it's particularly important this year because, you know, let's be honest, there are a lot of contentious discussions and issues that are floating around right now. There are controversial items on state level elections that your branches or state organizations may be advocating on, such as reproductive rights or the Equal Rights Amendment. And some states also have their own ERAs. On the national level, our Title IX new guidance will be coming out, I think, within the next few weeks. And that could, depending on what's in it, be a source of tense discussions and conversations. We have a highly polarizing national election going on, and you could have highly polarized local elections as well. And of course, we have open membership on the ballot for the AAUW bylaws again. So there's a lot percolating there. And keeping our civility hat, and that's why I'm wearing the hat, will keep us moving forward in a productive way. I have adapted a speech that I heard a friend of mine give recently on a DEI panel. It's the Honorable Tanya Kennedy. She's an Associate Justice on the New York State Appellate Division First Department Court. So I did want to just refer her because she really inspired me with an amazing speech she gave. This will not be as amazing, probably. I'll be paraphrasing a little, but I hope it will give you something to think about in terms of facilitating productive civil conversation on difficult topics. First and foremost, be empathetic. Try to see the situation from the other person's point of view, even if you disagree with them strongly. Be an active listener. Pay full attention and acknowledge what other people are saying. It can make the difference in the tone of the conversation. Shake your head, visually show them that you're actually hearing them and you're understanding what they're saying. Be respectful, non-judgmental, and non-condescending. And treat the other person's perspective with the same respect and importance as you would yours. That will keep you from being condescending, hopefully. Be curious and open to learning, once again, even if you disagree. If you start to feel, if you're disagreeing, and you start to feel a little angry or defensive, step back, take a moment, compose yourself, breathe. I like to count to 10 before I respond to things and stay calm, and you'll be surprised at how that will impact the person or people that you're engaging with. Agree to disagree, but respectfully, and keep the conversation going. Seek to understand the other person's or people's perspective before you express your own questions for clarification, and repeating points back to let them know that not only, once again, that you acknowledge what they're saying, but you really are hearing what they say and you understand them. Find common ground. Now, if this is a conversation or a meeting with AAUW members, hopefully you already have common ground, right? Because you all agree on the mission, vision, and values of AAUW. But we're talking about advocacy that you're doing, programs that you're doing in the larger community. So you'll be engaging with people other than AAUW members as this year goes along. So it's important to remember to try to find common ground no matter what, because we're all in the end more alike than unalike. And it's essential that we identify areas of interest to foster mutual respect and understanding. And finally, be patient. Changing someone else's perspective, should that happen, and reaching common ground, it doesn't happen overnight. These conversations happen over time. So hopefully these will be conversations that you've already been engaging in and will continue to. And, you know, you may not change the other person's mind, and that's fine. We can't change everyone's. But it's important to find that common ground, to be respectful, and to create a space where people feel they can be honest and be themselves. So I'm not sure if I'm turning it back over to you, Melinda, or who we're going to next.
Megan.
I just want to echo what Edwina was had started off with, and just how important this conversation is about civility when it comes to AUW's public policy priorities. Melinda mentioned how our internal policies are created, and this same conversation about being rooted in inclusion and the importance of civility and understanding as we're communicating with one another does apply to our public policy priorities, which are affirmed by a membership vote every other year. So again, these are your public policy priorities. And as we enter this year, as you hear your branches and national talking more about public policy, we hope that this entire conversation that we're having today applies both internally to our work and externally to our policy work.
Great, thank you, Megan. I think now we're going to hear from Melissa Leduc. Dr. Leduc?
Thanks so much, Shannon. Thanks so much to the panelists. This is meant to be the start of the conversation, in lots of conversations, as our panelists said, on the direction that may cause some contention within AAUW and within our states, branches, and our nation as a whole. So with that, Edwina brought up some great points on how to navigate some of these difficult conversations, which we do also have some tools in our toolkit to help. So if we could show how to navigate to the toolkit. Perfect. So there are a couple different ways to navigate to the toolkit. So the first is to click on membership. Next slide, please. From membership, you will hit the third button under governance and tools. Next slide, please. And then it'll bring you to the diversity, equity, and inclusion toolkit. The other way to reach the toolkit and the resources to include information on today's webinar, next slide, please, is to hit the search button, so that cool little magnifying glass. Next slide. In the search bar, please type DEI toolkit. Next slide. And then you'll come up with a lot of different topics within the toolkit itself. So please feel free to click on any one of those that piques your interest. And the next part that you will see will be the diversity, equity, and inclusion toolkit itself. Next slide. So we've tried to arrange the toolkit into lots of different categories. First, we always want to start off that we are committed to inclusion and equity. As highlighted today, diversity, equity, inclusion is the foundation of AAUW and really bringing us together to talk about our differences, celebrate them, and then ensure that we all, despite our differences, have an equal say and equal voice. Again, starting with difficult conversations is probably a great thing to review, especially if you know you may be going somewhere where something can get a little contentious, or you're talking with folks that may be less comfortable sharing their opinions than you are. Today, we are going to cover the plug and play DEI programming, which really is our lesson plan that accompanies each of the webinars. We draft these to allow everyone in branches or states or in small groups to explore this topic at their comfort level with some ideas and in a framework. So next slide, please. So today we wanted to focus on some inclusive policies within AAUW. all our plug and plays have the same basic framework in terms of we provide an overview. Next slide, please. Thank you. We provide an overview of what the programming is, just to help frame the facilitator and the participants to start the lesson or the discussion. The next slide, please. We also give the facilitator some tools to help prepare themselves before meeting with participants. In this case, we always want to start with the getting started with difficult conversations. It's great to set up some ground rules on how to treat each other in a respectful manner throughout any discussion. And then we do have the 2 links to the AAUW Board of Directors policy book and the bylaws proposed changes. So if you haven't reviewed either one of those, please do. The bylaw proposed changes is definitely something that we want everyone to understand and provide feedback on. We'll also want you to review the AAUW civility policy. And these slides will be available to help you navigate to that policy. And then something else to help with our difficult conversations is to create an inclusive space. So we also provide some help in providing or in creating inclusive spaces using that link to a video. Next slide, please. If you take part in this plug and play programming, we do have some expectations for both the facilitators and the participants in order to help facilitate a great and active discussion. Next slide. Then we give some ideas on how to implement the session. This is definitely not an end-all be-all. Again, it's just a framework to help start a conversation or help start the facilitator down a path of inquiry and discovery with their team. Next slide. And today with our toolkit, so we want to foster discussion in your teams and in your groups, but we also want everyone to get involved. So if you haven't checked out the advocacy toolkit within AAUW, please do. There's lots of different resources and lots of different ways to get involved. Next slide, please. One way that everyone can do is the 2-minute activist. So if you click on that link, it provides you all the details you need to contact your member of Congress or your state legislator about issues that matter to you and matter to AAUW. Next slide. And then for those of you, I apologize, this slide doesn't look great. But for those of you that are in the National Capital Region, please consider being part of the AAUW Lobby Corps. There is the contact information if you are interested. And with that, I think that is the end. If you have any questions about this webinar or any other diversity, equity, inclusion initiative, please feel free to email us at diversity@aauw.org. We would love to hear from you. And Shannon, over to you.
Great. Thank you so much, Melissa. I really appreciate you and all of our panelists tonight. Wanted to talk a little bit more, I think, about the civility policy and how we got to this point. Melinda, would you mind giving a little bit of background on the governance committee's work on that and sort of what led the committee to really take that on as a project?
Thank you, Shannon. In reading the questions that we've had on why are we talking about this, I will tell you that I wish as a membership that we had learned from our parents and our teachers and our friends and people we've associated with how to be civil, but we have found in AAUW that many, not just a few, of our members are not civil, that the interaction between members and staff, particularly when we were having problems with the community hub and the different issues that have been brought to us from branches and states, in how members interact with each other in meetings and in working in AAUW, the governance committee looked at it and decided that we needed to address this issue. It sounds like a simple thing. Why are we talking about being civil? Everybody knows we need to do that. But we sometimes have to remind people because not everybody is being civil. And we thought, especially now that we're going to have some serious discussions about the open membership vote, which many of us have been involved in this vote before, and it has gotten contentious before. We thought this was a time to have a refresher on how we should act as members of this organization. Again, we are all members of one organization. We are all part of this organization, and each and every one of us has an obligation to this organization, and part of that is to be civil. So we had a subcommittee of the governance look at this, and they decided that not only would we draft a civility policy, but we would also look at members' rights and responsibilities. Because again, a lot of what we get is what members want from our national staff and our national board and our national committees, and not so much what members want to provide back to their organization. So that's kind of the history of how this came about and why the governance committee took it on and decided that this was the time that we'd like to bring this forward.
Great, thanks, Melinda. I think that's really helpful context. We know we are going into a fairly controversial season with the vote that's coming up on open membership. We just finished the comment period where we received a lot of feedback from members via that comment period, and not all of it was civil. Not all of it was framed in a way that would be lead to a productive conversation. So as we know that branches and states are going to be talking more about open membership in the next couple of months leading up to the vote, is there any advice, let's start with Melinda, with you, that you would give branches as they're thinking about having these discussions in their branches?
What we want to make sure that everyone understands is there is no right or wrong position on open membership. There are opinions about it that need to be respected. The board has taken a stand that they would like to open up AAUW membership, so they are pushing it forward. But it is not being forced upon the membership. It's going to be a vote, and we're asking branches to have these discussions. And we think you should start with your branch boards, having a small discussion among your board, deciding what position, if any, you would like to take on this issue, and then facilitating that discussion with your branch members. There are a lot of emotional issues involved in this vote because many members have been with this organization for decades. They earn their degrees and they're very passionate about their degrees. But I will tell you that when we were having these discussions before, it would sometimes get inappropriate. And actually, many people don't believe this, but there were times when the comments bordered on being very much against what we stand for, inclusivity, equity, and basically sometimes we even get comments that have a racial tone to them. So we ask that you have these discussions because it is important for everyone to be able to speak on the issue. But we want you to understand that this is not a fight. This is a difference of opinion by people. It's not a fight. It's going to be a vote of the membership. And if the membership decides that we're opening up AAUW, then that's what it will be. If the membership decides we're not, then that's what it's going to be. But we really want this to not turn into something hostile. And it has in the past, and that's why we are kind of trying to get ahead of it this time, because we don't need anything more to deal with in AAUW. AAUW's got a lot of work to do right now. We are for women's rights, and right now there's a lot of work to be done on that. And so we want everybody to stay together. We want everybody to stay part of the organization, but we want to give you a way to have this discussion. So that's why we're really encouraging branch boards have it first, then go to your membership, let everybody speak their mind, and then we will move forward with a vote. And whatever the vote is, that's what it will be.
Great, thank you, Melinda. Anyone else want to weigh in on with advice for folks as we go into open membership, Melissa or Luna or Edwina?
Yeah, sure. So we have a lot of discussion we are seeing on diversity, equity, inclusion. And the reason that we have it is because it helps, it's beneficial for all of us. It is good to have agreements, it's good to have disagreements. Together, we make good decisions. And it's a normal thing. It's just listening and understanding, as Edwina was saying. We have to understand, we have to listen to each other and understand. And we have to be, again, inclusive, open to diverse thoughts and suggestions, and work for equity for women, girls, and everyone else. That's all. It's simple.
And to add to that, AAUW was founded so we would have a place, right? So we would have advocacy, but the rights that we are still hoping to fight for aren't just for women with degrees, right? So it's all women's rights. So I think that not including part of ourselves in this conversation, in this fight, is really kind of hindering our efforts.
Great.
Melissa, if I can add on to just what you just mentioned, is the public policy priorities that have been voted on by the membership do extend to women with degrees, women without degrees, all women. The public policy positions affirm our support for policies that focus on particular demographics of women. So this is something that in one area that our membership has been very supportive of. So this is an opportunity to recognize that.
Great, thanks, Megan. There's an interesting question about how members will be held accountable for this policy, and any methods in place, any methods for addressing sort of bad behavior or bullying when it does take place. Melinda, do you want to take a stab at that? I have some thoughts, but I'd love to hear your view on it.
Right. I was just about to type an answer to that, so thanks, Shannon. The policies that I talked about review, we have Board Policy 201, which is an AAUW membership review policy, 202, which is a branch review policy, and 203, which is a state review policy. They're very detailed mechanisms for us to look at individuals, branches, and states that we feel are violating the mission and policies of AAUW. So if you have and we've had this brought to us, if you have a member who is bullying someone else, there is a mechanism for bringing them forward to basically have a review to see if we will still allow them to be a member of our organization. And the same goes for branches and states. I also read one of the questions that was talking about that they thought this would be more about how we bring people into our organization. This is kind of the basics that we want to start, because if your branch and your state are not acting in a civil way, if they're not being inclusive, if they're not following the mission of AAUW, then you can't invite people in, because it is not a welcoming place for them. So if you want to be open to other people coming in, particularly people of color, younger people, then you need to think through the way that you run your organization, way you run your branch and your meetings. How do you treat people that come into your meetings? Do you listen to their opinion when they're 25 years old and telling you how they think it should be done? So this seems very basic, but your branch won't be welcoming to an outsider if you're not running it in a way that is civil and inclusive.
Thanks, Melinda. And I think there's a really great comment from the Q&A that essentially says this policy gives us a common language for addressing these situations, right? As situations may occur. And I think that that is really spot on, right? There are mechanisms, as Melinda mentioned, for differing policies if things get to a certain level, but it's really the day-to-day that we want to be able to just reinforce when you see or hear or witness, you know, something inappropriate happening, that we have something to reference where we can say, this is all how we're coming to the table or how we'd like to show up for each other. And it's just another tool in the toolbox that helps us do that, along with a lot of the other resources that are available within the toolkit as well.
I've been looking at the questions in the Q&A, and I just want to make sure that folks know there's going to be a lot of information coming out on open membership, and there is a presentation, a PowerPoint. A lot of this information is already on the AAUW website. Also, national board members are being invited to state conferences to speak more about open membership. And so we may address some of these questions. I don't know, Shannon. But there'll be many forums and many opportunities to answer a lot of the questions. But I'll answer one, which is that we will remain AAUW.
Yeah, thank you for that. That's a common question that folks have. There is a Q&A on the website as well. If you just Google AUW National Election, you'll get to all the resources, including a toolkit from that main national election page, and that does have an FAQ that gets at some of sort of the most common questions, such as the name and things of that nature. So I appreciate you bringing that up and letting me plug that.
There's a question about could you provide other examples of not being welcoming? I've been a member of this organization for more than 30 years, but let me tell you my personal story. When I was very young and I was going to my first meetings, I went to sit at a table at a luncheon, and they told me I couldn't sit there because they were saving it for all their friends. Well, I was young, I was new, so I wandered around trying to find a place to sit. That's not welcoming. So we have to remember that. You like to sit with your friends, but if you have somebody who's new or who's young or who's a person of color, you want to be welcoming. You want to provide a seat for them. You want to have them. How about if we have people who have different opinions and we find ourselves saying, oh, we've already tried that, it didn't work, or you're not doing that right. That's not welcoming. And what we're talking about is being open to other people's ways of doing things. And many of our branches and states are not that way. They've done it the same way for 110 years, and that's the way they're going to do it in the future. That's not welcoming. We want new ideas. We want we need to change. Things don't always stay the same.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Melinda. Are there any last comments before we wrap up tonight from you, Melissa, as chair of the Inclusion and Equity Committee?
So thanks, Shannon. And thanks again to all the panel members today, and to all the folks that attended. There are some great questions. We know open membership is a big deal. It's a big conversation point and potentially a turning point for AAUW. I would like to build on what Melinda said and plug our next webinar, the Inclusion Equity Committee's next webinar. It is going to be on the 28th of February at 7 p.m. And we're actually going to go over the evolution of AAUW and hit these high points on how AAUW has evolved with the times to be more inclusive, and hear from folks that benefited from those changes. So we hope to see you then as well.
Melissa, can I put a plug for one other webinar as well? There's especially on the topic of civility. And if you want to see this in practice in your own communities, the association's public policy committee is hosting a webinar this time next Wednesday, so February 7th, and about school boards and how school boards have been the front lines of our public policy discussions about education. And this is definitely an example of where AAUW members in certain communities have really had a stabilizing influence on conversations at school board meetings, which has not brought out the best in people in the past year and a half. But there's some very good examples of some branches in California, for example, where they've really leaned into our values here that we've been talking about tonight, and it has changed the tenor of some of those school board meetings. So if you'd like to be part of that conversation, hear what how one state is addressing school board issues, especially around book bans, please join us next Wednesday.
Great. Any more plugs before we wrap up?
Me. One more
great.
plug. Okay. Just one more thing. I know we've had several questions about, well, we've had this vote before. Well, we are all members of this organization, and if a member wants to raise an issue, it's raised. So we're voting again. But let me tell you, never in any of these elections have we had more than 25% of our membership vote. 25%. So 75% of our members haven't spoken on this issue. So what I want to plug is vote. Please have everyone in your branch vote. Encourage them to vote, tell them to vote, remind them to vote, because we want to hear from everybody. We don't want to just hear from 25% of our membership. So that's my plug. Thank you.
So I have a plug on something completely unrelated. You see that I'm wearing red, Melinda is, I think Shannon is. That's because February is Heart Healthy Month. So it's wearing the red is one way of highlighting how important this issue is, how it's becoming one of the leading causes of death for women in this country. I personally, in the past 2 months, have had 4 friends die from heart attacks. They didn't know that they had high blood pressure or some other ailment. So take care of your heart this month. Focus on that, as well as being civil.
Great advice. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. Luna, any last words before we jump off?
Thank you, Shannon. Yeah, please remember equity, diversity, and inclusion in your work, at home, in your community, and we will be progressing so fast and we'll get all our goals achieved. Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you to everyone who participated today. We had about 350 people on this webinar, which is absolutely amazing. And I thank you all for taking the time to attend. Thank you to our panelists for a great discussion today. There's going to be a post survey. If you could just take a couple minutes to fill that out, that helps us understand how to create the content that you would like to see in the future. So thanks to everyone very much for their participation today, and have a wonderful evening. Good night, everyone.